So this article is about 7-Eleven, and I didn't realize that 7-Eleven was doing this. So this is new. 7-Eleven owners are using surveillance cameras to prevent workers from stealing months after some franchisees paid back 173 million over wage theft accusations. And so this is by a Tyler Schoenmaker. And I really was unaware, of this. So 7-Eleven and other convenience stores have deployed surveillance tech to prevent worker theft and shoplifting, but the company's theft of employee wages often goes unscrutinized. So 7-Eleven has had to pay back, look how much, 173 million over wage theft from its employees. That is crazy. So 7-Eleven and other stores are monitoring workers 24/7 to prevent theft and shoplifting. But the franchisees were recently told to return money that they stole from their workers in wage theft case. 173 million. That's a lot of money. So some experts say it reflects the dual standard that assumes low-wage workers can't be trusted. So workers at 7-Eleven stores, Shell gas stations, Dairy Queens, restaurants, Holiday Inn hotels, other services businesses are being monitored 24/7 by way of or via security camera by a virtual supervisor. This is from Vice News. They reported on Monday. So Washington's based company, it's called Live Eye, offers surveillance technology, and it's $399 per month. And it's ostensibly meant to help business owners deter shoplifting, robberies, and employee theft. So the Live Eye promotional videos, according to the Vice, remote supervisors question convenience store workers about whether they paid for drinks and why they are talking to a person who's out of the view of the camera, and even attempt to scare off suspected robbers in what appears to be a 7-Eleven store. So theft and fraud aren't small problems. They cost retailers about 62 billion in 2019, according to the National Retail Foundation. But experts are increasingly raising concerns about whether such intrusive and persistent surveillance may impose even greater cost on workers. So they're also asking why problems like wage theft, with employers in 2019 stealing an estimated amount of $12.6 billion from their workers, making less than $13 per the hour, according to National Employment Law Project. It's receiving far less scrutiny. They're more focused on workers stealing rather than the actual people who are running 7-Elevens stealing wages from the workers themselves. So 7-Eleven, the Live Eye, didn't respond for requests of comment on the story in particular. Of course not. So part of the problem, some experts say, stems from a prejudice many people hold against low-wage workers and low-income individuals. And so when it comes to low-wage work and people who are on welfare, there's just a general distrust. And so this is Ahai or Ahi, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing it, Nguyen. He's a researcher at the think tank Data and Social our Society, who recently wrote a report on workplace surveillance called The Constant Boss, told this to the Insider. So it has nothing to do with technology, she said, adding there's a dual standard in how employers treat low-wage workers compared to corporate employees and executives. So there's a worker bias, in other words. So the NRF survey found retail chains fired an average of 559 employees for stealing in 2019 and prosecuted on average 156, while research by the Economic Policy Institute found employers are rarely prosecuted and unfounded labor regulators often lack the ability to enforce wage laws. And so 7-Eleven announced last year that some of the franchisees paid 173 million back to wages to more than 4,000 workers in Australia after media outlets, including Four Corners, the Sydney Morning Herald, reported that the company stole as much as half the workers' wages. Doctored pay records to cover they doctored up the records to cover up the scheme that took place and threatened potential whistleblowers with deportation. So that should tell you who they also will hire, uh, people that are undocumented. And I've seen that, I suspected that in some of the 7-Elevens, most of them, and even here in California. And so they use that as their go-to. If you tell that we're paying you, underpaying you, then you won't have a job at all and you can get deported. And so that's their tactic. So during an investigation by Australia labor regulator, 7-Eleven's head office in the county faced accusations that it had bribed franchisees not to testify against its executives. So 7-Eleven denied the accusations, of course, while the company chairman Russell Withers, the CEO Warren Wilmot, eventually resigned because, it's 7-Eleven's catching heat now because of all of this. So Wilmot faced no financial or criminal penalties as a result of the scandal. And so in that context, Nguyen said that the theft by 7-Eleven store employees is a much smaller problem than the bigger issue of wage theft that has taken place, and also the scandal behind paying undocumented workers and using that as their go-to to basically um, threaten them that they're going to deport them or turn them into ICE. But that's not to say tools like Live-Eye aren't inherently bad. So in theory, this system could be helpful for retail workers, Nguyen said, but that's not how it's being deployed though. So hiring a security guard would be far more effective at deterring theft, she said, but what's being presented is a video camera that may be turned on to the workers themselves. So it is not immediately clear if how many 7-Eleven stores employees are security guards in addition to the other safety measures are being used for this tactic. So a former 7-Eleven consultant told Vice the Live-Eye was a solution in search of a problem because theft and shoplifting doesn't cost stores much, and that startling armed robberies or robbers violated star- they violated the company policy and could put workers in more danger. So we provide the 7-Eleven with a basic security camera that includes a CCTV and alarms. However, independent franchise owners can install their own system on top of what is already provided. So 7-Eleven spokesperson told Vice this. And so we're using insecurity about the risk of robbery as an excuse to target workers. Eva Bloom de Montet, a senior researcher at the Privacy International, told Vice, adding, what's happening with workplace surveillance is employers are trying to keep track of their employees to make sure that they match their idea of productivity. And this is very toxic for the mental health of employees. So this is what's been happening in these 7-Eleven. So now when you go in 7-Eleven, you have to wonder, are you being watched and the people that are working at 7-Eleven being watched? That is the question. And I wouldn't disbelieve what they've just said because I've always wondered about that and who they hire in there when they just said that they usually use that as a tactic to threaten deportation if they tell that they're underpaying their workers. So having said that, all I know is I don't think people would want to work for a company that has a history of scandal of stealing from their own workers and underpaying them and bribing them to be quiet, and threatening them, bribing them and threatening them at the same time. So these things right here, 173 million over wage theft accusations, that's really bad. And so what are the workers right now? People that are working these jobs protesting about low wages. And so this just basically adds on to a lot of the things that people have been complaining about. It sheds a lot of validity in why they protest about these jobs not paying enough. They're not livable wages, and then on top of that, you're being surveillanced. Having said that, I'm gonna let this go. Thanks for listening.